Hey, how's it going? This is Mr. Miles again, and today I'm going to be talking about scientific method. Now, the scientific method is extremely important, as you can probably guess, because this is a science class, and we're going to be using it throughout the year. You also can use it in your other classes and in all facets of life, pretty much most of them. The scientific method does work, and it helps you understand the world around you a lot better and test it. So here we go. So the scientific method that I'm going to be showing you today has 6 steps. And with all these 6 steps, you might see people teaching the scientific method with more or less steps than I have right here. But for our intents and purposes, this is going to help you out the best any test that you ever come across. If you know these 6 steps, you're pretty much going to be set. So here we go. So step 1. The first step is to observe. You're going to make an observation, and whether that comes in, those are supposed to be eyeballs, whether it comes in through eyes, through your mouth, which is taste, through your ears, which is audio, which is cool hair, through skin, through touch, through nose, through smell. You're going to take in the world around you, and with what you're taking in, you are going to formulate a. So we're going to ask a. Anybody guess what step 2? Ask a what? It's always in green. Ask a question. So you're going to take in the things that are happening around you. That's going to be your input, and you're going to use that to ask a question. Now, when you ask this question, you're going to need to use it to move on to step 3. Now, step 3 is very important, and this is called the time saver step. It's going to be research. When you ask that question, you're going to want to make sure that nobody else has really answered that question, or if they have answered it, how they came to that. You're going to want to do as much research as possible, because if you don't, you're going to waste a lot of time. And to emphasize this, let's go here. But in some cases, you'll find out that there is no research on it, or the research is inconclusive, or you might even disagree with the research. You might question the way that they did it. According to your step 1, your observation, their research just isn't matching what you're seeing. So you'll take that question, you'll do some research, which will get you to step 4, which is your hypothesis, or hypothesis. Don't say hypothesis, that's actually wrong. So you're going to get your hypothesis. Now with your hypothesis, you're going to have to use this as an educated guess. What you're trying to do is you're trying to find an answer to the question you have using the things that you learned through research. Now research can come in different forms, such as Google or Yahoo, or even your parents, your siblings, your grandparents, a friend. You're going to take that research and you're going to turn it into a hypothesis, an educated guess, once you put all that stuff together. Now, after your hypothesis, you're going to move on to step 5. Let's do that. Step 5, which is test, or if you're scared of test, you can put experiment. So you do your test or experiment. Now, your test or your experiment needs to be a fair and balanced test. Now, we're going to learn about something called variables. Not today, but we will learn about it in the future if you don't already know what a variable is. Variables are pretty much set up to help you understand what you're measuring and to give it a fair, balanced possibility of getting the correct answer. We'll go a little bit into variables on this, but if you have any other questions on variables, make sure you come and ask me about it. Now, once you do that fair and balanced test, you're going to move on to step 6, which is analyze data. Now, you're going to want to analyze data because it's incredibly pointless to do an experiment other than to see something explode and have a good excuse for it if you're not going to measure something in that experiment and then be able to analyze that data. Now, when you're able to analyze the data, you can go back to your hypothesis and you can try and see if it's correct or not. So here we go. So let's look at all the steps through here. So you have 1, which is, who can guess? There you go, observe. You probably just weirded out your siblings who noticed you looking on the computer right now by shouting out the word observe. Now number 2 is ask a What are we going to ask? Not a panda. We're going to ask a question. It's important to ask that question. Now, once we ask that question, we are going to do research, which is also the time saver step. We need to do the research. Now, once we do the research, we're going to form that educated guess, and remember, you need to have the research so you can do this. We're going to create our hypothesis, or hypothesis, which is actually right. Now, step number 5, you're going to run your test. Or again, like I said, if you're scared of it, your experiment. You're going to run your test or your experiment. With that, when you're all done, you're going to analyze your data. Now, the reason that the scientific method is so valuable is because you can do stuff like this. So let's say you observe something, you ask a question about it, you do the research, find out that there's not a lot on it, or it's inconclusive. You come up with your own theory, your own hypothesis of what exactly is going on, and you decide to test or do an experiment with that. Once you do that test or experiment, you make sure it's fair and balanced. You then analyze the data. When you're looking at the analyzed data, you look back at your hypothesis and ask the question, does the hypothesis match what I came through with my test? Well, if it doesn't, all you have to do is you strike your hypothesis and you come up with a new one. You say, well, that didn't work, and you tweak yours a little bit so it will fit with the experiment, something that will make sense. You do that test or experiment again and you make sure that it's fair, and then you analyze the data again. Again, if you find out that it doesn't work, then you come up with a new one. Or maybe it does work, or maybe this third one works. And that's where you can come up with a good hypothesis. And you keep coming up with new tests or experiments. And every single time you come up with a fair and balanced one that makes sense, and that hypothesis isn't matching, you're either going to have to tweak it or come up with a new one altogether. And so that's why the scientific method is so important. So let's go into an example of where we can actually use the scientific method and a real thing that we see in life. So now again, if you can figure out what I'm drawing, feel free to shout it out. This is kind of like Pictionary, and you're going to see what I'm doing. Alright, can you see what that is? Not yet. We should definitely give it away. Alright, yes, that is a goldfish. My pathetic attempt at a goldfish. And this goldfish has an eye, and he has bubbles. This goldfish is also named Bob. So let's say you have a goldfish named Bob, and you've had it for a couple weeks now, and you invite a friend over. And so here's you. And you invite a friend over and say, hey, look at my goldfish. And maybe you're a girl. I don't know. You can be a boy or a girl, whoever you feel like being. And then there's your friend. A girl, a very cute boy. Maybe named Tom. Anyway, so you have your goldfish, and you introduce it to your friend, and your friend says, well, I don't really like goldfish. And you ask, why? Why don't you like goldfish? And he says, I don't like goldfish because they only have memories of 3 seconds. Some of you might have heard this before, but a lot of people have shared that goldfish only have memories of 3 seconds. Now, that kind of confuses you, because from what you've seen is that Bob, right here, whenever he sees you coming, he swims to the edge of the bowl, getting ready to get fed, because he knows whenever you're near, he's going to get fed. Now, that conflicts with what he says, Tom, about that 3 seconds, because you're not feeding Bob every 3 seconds. So, can you see where the scientific method is coming into play here? So the first thing is you observe. You listen to what Tom says, but then you're also observing that Bob swims to the goldfish bowl whenever you get near him. So that's your observation. Now the next one is asking a question. So the question is what Tom saying correct, or is what I'm observing different? Why exactly is Bob doing that then? Is he actually asking for food? So you ask that question. You're going to do some research. You're going to go on Google, you're going to go on Yahoo, you're going to ask your parents, you're going to ask your friends, see what they say. And let's say that it's pretty inconclusive. They say, hey, yeah, I have heard that goldfish only have memories of 3 seconds, but I don't know, I've never done an experiment. Well, that's where you go. I will do the experiment. But first you need to come up with a hypothesis. So you don't want to believe that Bob doesn't know who you are. He knows exactly who you are. So your hypothesis says that goldfish, in fact, have a memory greater than 3 seconds. Now, whether you believe that it's going to be a month or a year, an hour, or anything like that, but you believe that goldfish do have a memory greater than 3 seconds. So that's your hypothesis. Now you have to test your hypothesis. You're going to do that test or experiment. And this is where the variables come in. So let's say we have 2 goldfish bowls here. You have yours. This is Bob. So Bob lives in here, and you've had him for a while, and you know what he does. Now let's say you get another goldfish. And this is how you do the experiment. This is how you trick your mom into getting you a new goldfish. You get a new goldfish named Jerry. And what you do is you set up a test where you walk near Bob, and of course, like always, he swims up close to the goldfish bowl because he knows you're going to feed him. And you walk up to Jerry, and you notice that Jerry doesn't swim up close to the goldfish bowl. Maybe he runs away. Maybe he gets scared. Maybe he just doesn't do anything and just keeps swimming around. So these are 2 variables. Now you're going to notice that they do act differently. But let's say over time, Jerry slowly starts moving towards the goldfish bowl and acting like Bob. Well, when you take all that and you measure how much Jerry's behavior has changed, and that's called analyzing the data. So you take all that information, you analyze it, and you come up with a conclusion saying, well, obviously, they have to have a memory of longer than 3 seconds. Because Jerry eventually learned that I was the person bringing this food, and he started to act like Bob. Now, if you wanted to, you could keep running these tests with different types of fish. You could try and train them in different ways, see if you can get them to do different behaviors. But in the end, you find out that goldfish do, in fact, have a memory longer than 3 seconds. And the truth is, you can actually run this experiment, and it proves to be true that goldfish do, in fact, have a memory longer than 3 seconds. And the great thing is we discovered all this using observe, asking a question, research, hypothesis, test or experiments, and analyzing the data. And that's why the scientific method is extremely valuable. And in those 6 steps, you learn how to use it. And let's see what kind of different ways you can use the scientific method to find out new things. All right, well, this is Mr. Miles. And so again, if you have any questions or comments about this video, if any part of it was kind of confusing, feel free to email me at bmiles@Somerset. Somerset, not Cent. North Las Vegas.org. And email me, and I'll try and email you back if you have any questions. Or if you want to ask me in class, that's perfectly fine. All right, well, you guys have a good day, and until next time, this is Mr. Miles.